Welcome, and then this is another episode of DC Sports Series, and I'm here with Katongo Tiayonse, and this edition is a little bit different from what we've been doing. This is basically about graduate students presenting their project or pitching their project, if we'll say it that way, in 15 minutes. So I may not interrupt or interfere with the presentation from Katongo. She will tell us a little about her research project and then probably share with us the finding and then the takeaway. But just for you to know, the title of her project, which is a master's thesis, is Examining Motives of Corporate Sports Sponsorship in Zambian Women's Volleyball. So I wouldn't talk much. Katongo, thank you, and then great to have you on DC Sports Series. And can you tell us a little bit about probably yourself, and then we start with your project?
Thank you very much, Derek, for the opportunity to be on this sports series. So, like you just clearly stated my name correctly, at least you got it very correctly
Yeah.
for the first time. Katongo Tionse is my name. I am from Zambia and I just recently graduated from a master's program at Seoul National University where I was majoring in global sports management. So prior to coming to South Korea, I was actively involved in volleyball, in Zambia Volleyball Association to be specific. And I also did other side sports projects with other institutions among sports in action and also the University of Zambia.
Well, that's
So
fantastic. Oh, sorry to
that's
come in
much.
there. Well,
No,
so
it's okay. That's much.
Katongo just told us about herself, so we would zoom in right away to the 15 minutes pitch. I will probably put the countdown on the clock. She will not see it, but she's going to tell us about her project. Once in a while, I would come in if there is something that's not clear. So for bachelor students out there who are inspired to take up masters, so you can see the process or the processual nature of writing a master's thesis. So first conceptualization to the methodology, sorry, conceptualization to a research question to the literature review or theoretical review to the methodology, but we'll focus more on the findings and what can be learned from it or future recommendations. So the floor is yours now.
Thank you very much once more, Derek. So firstly, my research is or was based on the motives of corporate sports sponsorship in Zambian women's volleyball. So just to give a brief of context with regards to this research topic and why I decided to pick on this angle. So firstly, as most people may not really know, volleyball is quite popular in Zambia and it is actually the fifth most played sport in the country. And in the last decade, women have actually increased their participation in this sport. And this in itself also has increased their attention from citizens to just understand what exactly it is about women's volleyball in Zambia. So this also research was initiated by the interest that I had to also just increase the business side of women's volleyball and also just explore the potential that women's sport has in achieving huge success compared to other sports like football, for example. So in this study, I did have research questions or research objectives, which firstly included to understand the intention of investment in women's volleyball in Zambia. So this research question was really guided by the literature that was reviewed prior to its establishment. And in this case, it also extends to understanding why even small companies or micro businesses that might want to invest in volleyball and what might prompt them. The second research objective of my study was to understand the different strategies that can be used by corporate companies to employ or improve their relationship with the Zambian women's volleyball teams. So, as you may have an idea about volleyball in Zambia based on the background I gave, volleyball is now quite popular in Zambia with the fact that we have quite an increasing number of female teams taking part in the National League. which in this case is the professional league. However, we've had situations where some of these teams dropped out of the national league because they could not really sustain their existence due to financial challenges. As a result, this study was also backed by that empirical evidence, seeing the number of teams reducing, especially from 2022 to 2023. However, the 2024 season has really improved because 5 more teams joined the league. So, what then is the significance of these research projects? I understand most people might want to know why it is important or relevant. So, volleyball in Zambia is increasing its capacity, not just in the main capital city, which is Lusaka, but is also expanding to other provincial towns, such as southern, northern, eastern, and also northwestern, among others. And because of that, it is vital for us to identify the reasons why a company might want to invest in it as a sport. Of course, with football, we've seen it naturally happen. Companies just come up on their own to invest in the sport. But with volleyball, we realize there is more that needs to be done in order for the sport to increase its visibility. That might even give assurance to a corporate sponsor to invest. And because of that, that is why this study was necessary, because it would also unveil important strategies that can be used by teams themselves in order for them to draft sponsorship proposals that might guarantee a success. As you know, on the aspect of sponsorship, it is not just okay to develop a one-sided proposal. It is important for both parties to actually provide the value that they would gain and also what they are willing to take. And because that has been lacking in Zambian volleyball, most of the teams usually are only interested maybe in receiving the financial side of it, but may not be too clear on what value they can give to that corporate sponsor in return. As such, that is why this study is significant. Secondly, this study is also important because it would also actually avail other things that might be of interest to the corporate sponsors. As you know, women mostly in most households are in charge of making purchasing decisions. So if corporate sponsors understand that women's volleyball is pulling a lot of crowd, definitely it is something that might be of interest to them. And as a result, they would actually increase their propensity to invest in this particular sport because they are assured that whatever their product or service they are trying to promote, in some way it might be purchased, used, or referred or recommended to another person. So in moving on, this study also was backed by a theoretical framework that was closely related to the topic. And in this case, the social exchange theory was used as a theoretical lens to understand the relationship or the reciprocal relationship between two parties. So why the social exchange theory? Somebody might wonder. So looking at the main characteristic of the social exchange theory, it indicates that two parties engage in a relationship which is only beneficial to them. If either of the parties realize that relationship is not beneficial, it means it might not be sustainable. So this theoretical framework was used because it clearly speaks to the objective of the study and what exactly is to be achieved or realized by both the sponsors as well as the actual teams. Secondly, the social exchange theory also views the sustainability of engagement on the basis that both teams need to be very committed and also active in achieving their objectives set out in their memorandum of understanding. I think, Derek, based on your experience, you would actually attest to the fact that most institutions or companies decide to terminate relationships or sponsorship deals with some teams on the basis that maybe one of the parties did not fulfill a certain obligation. So this particular theory emphasizes the need to actually put in the actual value that the company might benefit from and also the value that the teams might benefit from. So to be more precise, the value that most companies in Zambia, based on the findings of this study, companies indicated that their main interest is to increase their brand awareness and they also aim to increase the awareness levels of their engagement with the community through the corporate social responsibility. On the aspect of the teams, the findings of the study also indicated that the women teams are also interested in the financial value that corporate sponsors bring on the table, but also they're interested in the longevity of the sport and to increase how many years a female team can play in the national league, provided it has financial base. So the other aspect of the project also extends to the methods that was employed in the study. To be specific, the study employed the quantitative mode of inquiry to collect data. So this data was only collected from corporate sports companies that are sponsoring volleyball in Zambia. So the reason why the study only collected data from companies that are sponsoring volleyball in Zambia is because we wanted to understand their real intention. It was not fitting for us to collect data from companies that have not yet sponsored the sport. As a result, this data collection was also aided by Zambia Volleyball Association, who in this case actually guided and provided a comprehensive list of companies that have invested in women's volleyball in the past decade. This also extends to the fact that data was statistically analyzed using so many tools such as EMOS and also SPSS. I wouldn't want to go into the nitty-gritties of that process, but because it was a quantitative study, it was also important for us to statistically analyze the data in order for us to also test the hypothesis. One thing I also did not mention earlier were that the study also had a hypothesis whose results were also presented. And it also indicated that the study had 6 hypotheses. Of the 6, 4 of the hypotheses were accepted and 2 were rejected. But based on that, this also gives a significant role of the study and how teams, Ministry of Sport, as well as corporate companies can utilize these findings in order for them to improve their relevance in society. So I would like to also briefly explain the results of these findings. I hope I have time. So the main findings of the study firstly indicated that companies are interested to invest in volleyball because they want to increase their brand awareness. It also indicated that companies are interested to invest in volleyball because they want to increase their awareness of corporate social responsibility initiatives, which also extends to improving the social welfare of athletes in volleyball, increasing also the retention of female volleyball players in the sport. As I mentioned earlier, some teams, in some times, they could drop out of the National League because of fund. So companies are trying to invest in volleyball in order to increase that retention rate of females participating in volleyball. On the aspect of teams are keen to actually increase their financial stability and also sustain their activities throughout the National League year. Then teams are also interested to gain this sponsorship in order for them to improve the quality of life of players. As you know, there is more to sport than the actual physical play on the ground. There is more that is involved in managing a player's welfare, their mental well-being, as also just their taking care of them medically in terms of injury management and also rehabilitation, which without funds cannot usually be easy or accessing. So based on that brief introduction or pitch, the research was basically concluded, and the findings of this study can be used not just by the corporate sponsors, but also by the actual teams in developing strategies that will align to the companies that want to invest in sport. Then the findings of the study will also be used by the ministry itself in order to identify and find better ways of approaching the corporate sponsors, as opposed to just going to a sponsor to say, please sponsor our tournament, sponsor our team, but they'll actually go with the actual value of what the company is looking for. On a broader scale, of course, the findings of this study may not really be applicable in every part of the world, looking at the geographical context in which the study was conducted. However, these studies are greatly applicable to the Zambian sports teams, not just volleyball, but to also other sports teams that are limited with sponsorship. On that note, I would like to hand over to you, Derek, and I am happy to take questions.
Well, that's fantastic. And I'm not here to probe your work because you've already done that, and I'm pretty sure that you've had supervisors as well as defending your thesis. So this is a great work. You spent, I think, 11 minutes, which is great, which means that we have 4 minutes to spare for some few interactions. But the my audience out there, it's for you to see, it's for you to note, and I would put. As you can see on your screen, we have Katongo's email address over there. If you want the full detail of the project, you can contact her and she'll make that available for you. But I think I really enjoy this speech the best way I can. And you spoke about six hypotheses, and I'm pretty sure that about the results, you mentioned about four, which probably are the significant or the ones accepted, as you said. But which ones were rejected if, teams or clubs want to learn from the findings of your results, particularly the hypotheses that were rejected? Which two were rejected?
Thank you for the good question,
Yeah.
Derek. So the other hypothesis that was rejected included the aspect of brand awareness, brand reputation, sorry, having a positive correlation with intention of investment. So this
Yeah.
was rejected because the respondents indicated that brand reputation is not much significant to them as a motive for investment. The other hypothesis that was rejected is on the aspect of increasing the teams that are taking part in volleyball. So the reason for that is that companies indicated that it is not necessary to increase the number of teams. However, it is necessary to prolong how many years that team stays or stays in the sport, because that in itself also encourages the younger generation to involve or be involved in sport in the longer term and not just the short term.
Yeah. So there you have it. So now, I mean, if a team or a club wants to know, particularly from the volleyball perspective, since that's what you focused on, but I'm pretty sure that this can be extended to other clubs or teams. What advice would you give from the Zambian context? You've seen a lot of things that are not sitting well with sponsors. You've, in a way, tried to delve into the minds of the sponsors. What advice would you give clubs or teams based on your research and your interaction with the companies or the sponsors of of the sponsors?
All right. Thank you
Feel
for
free
another
to
good question.
feel free to go feel free to elaborate on this. Yeah.
Sure. So, firstly, my advice would be that the teams or the other sports that might be interested in utilizing sponsorship as a tool to expand their sport, I think firstly, they need to consider building a good investor relationship. First of all, I think it's not just in Zambia, but even maybe in your country or other countries, many are the times when a sponsor would come on board and sponsor a tournament or a team once off. Mostly teams do not get back to them, or they do not want to nurture that relationship. So the other aspect of this also is that the social exchange theory involves or indicates the fact that this particular relationship needs to be nurtured. No wonder it has the social aspect of it. Besides them just giving you money once off, you need to make sure that you nurture that relationship over time. Get back to them, ask them how best you can help them in increasing their visibility or just ensuring that their product or service sells. That's my first advice. Secondly, it is also important to provide statistical feedback to these sponsors. For example, if a team is hosting a tournament or a friendly game, sponsors want to know the numbers, how many people will be watching, how many people have the ability to purchase a product or a service. And that information is not information that is readily available to these sponsors. As a result, it makes them assume or just guess. So this is important. Teams need to make sure that they provide statistical numbers to these sponsors. Okay, our volleyball tournament maybe attracts 200 people, 300 people. And this particular statistical figure should be at least close to accurate. Because at times, if you exaggerate, sponsors might come and they would get disappointed. Thirdly, I think teams needs to also invest in ensuring that they have a qualified personnel to develop these proposals. Many other times that teams are in denial. They would tell you, no, we are experts, we can do this. But you need that third brain that can help you develop a proposal that would be specific and that might be in line to the values of that company, because that is only where you can actually be
Yeah.
assured that a company might come on board. They may not get just your generic proposal. They need to be very, very specific and provide something to them. Okay, are you going to give them the audience? Are the audience going to associate or interact with their product? So basically, that can be my advice.
Well, that's fantastic. And as I always say, research project is the tip of the iceberg. It's a journey that is very, very difficult, especially for first timers. And often what we see is they defending their project or thesis or dissertation. They don't tell you everything that they go through. Students, even experts who go through that. So, in brief, can you share with us some of the lessons from your experience? The challenges and then the motivations. You spoke about motives. And then lastly, the challenges, the motivations, and then also probably the takeaway of this whole experience. Sometimes mental health and other issues also come into play. So, in brief, we have just 1 minute. In brief, can you share with us to inspire somebody who is in the process now or about to embark on this journey?
Thank you. So quickly, first of all, the biggest lesson I got from this experience is that research is about reading. You need to read. There are not two ways, there are no shortcuts. You need to read. That's the only way you can inform yourself or contextualize what you are trying to achieve. The challenges, it was not so easy to actually design a methodology that was closely related to my topic. So that needs a lot of expertise. That is why maybe we have advisors. So we need to feel free to contact our advisors and quickly ask questions that might be of help than just taking it, the I know it or approach. Then the motivation. For me, I was greatly motivated because I was already a volleyball player back in Zambia and I transitioned to an administrator. So that was the greatest motivation because I saw these challenges very closely to me. And the main takeaway is that this study is not perfect and there is more room to improve it and to refine it. So more research needs to be done on this aspect on sponsorship in Zambia.
Well, thank you so much. First of its kind, my first guest is Katongo Tia I hope I got it right once again. And I hope someone is inspired out there. And once again, I want to say thank you for opening this episode for master students, PhDs to share their experience, their learning journey, particularly in relation to their project. And I hope we have you here once again, hopefully when you start your PhD. And thank you so much once again.
Thank you very much for your time. Bye.
Bye.